She said I could hold the baby tomorrow. But then I watched her hand the baby to a stranger in yoga pants and a too tight smile. It wasn't a misunderstanding, not a mistake, not something I could explain away later, like I had so many times before. I stood there, frozen in the doorway of my daughter's living room, coat still on, holding a gift bag with a hand-knitted blanket that I'd stayed up late finishing. Amber hadn't even looked inside. "She's sleeping now, Mom," she'd said gently, brushing her fingers through her hair, all casual charm. "Let's let her rest. You can hold her tomorrow, okay?" I'd nodded. What else was I supposed to do? Argue? Beg? Demand time with my own grandchild? And then, as I was about to step back out onto the porch, pretending I hadn't heard the subtle click of rejection in her voice, I saw it. Amber lifting little Lily out of the bassinet and handing her over to a woman I'd never met. Someone younger, dressed like she was heading to brunch, her fake nails brushing my granddaughter's cheek. "She just adores her," Amber had said, smiling. "It's like she's her aunt." Aunt. I wasn't even allowed to touch the baby, but this woman, a yoga friend from some retreat in Oregon, was like family. I stood there for a moment too long. No one noticed, or maybe they did and chose to ignore me, which somehow felt worse. I turned and stepped outside before anyone could see the tremble in my mouth. The gift bag thudded lightly in the garbage can by the door. The blanket could keep company with the coffee grounds and eggshells. It was almost 4 p.m. The February air was still, cold, but not bitter. I walked slowly back to my car, an old white Buick that still smelled faintly of the cinnamon gum Walter used to chew. The same Walter who died 12 years ago and never got to meet his granddaughter. He would have held that baby with both hands and a full heart. The car started on the second try. I drove with stiff fingers and a growing knot in my throat. I didn't go home right away. I needed somewhere neutral, somewhere that didn't remind me of my daughter's baby blanket or the crib we painted together when she was pregnant, the one she later said didn't match her nursery aesthetic. So I found myself at the parking lot of an old diner off Route 12, sat in the car, watched people come and go, waitresses in pink aprons, couples in windbreakers. I didn't go in. My phone buzzed once, a text from Amber. "Thanks for dropping by today, Mom. Sorry you didn't get more time with Lily. Tomorrow will be better." Better. That word used to mean something. These days, it feels like a polite postponement, like an overdraft of kindness that never gets repaid. Tomorrow will be better. But I knew already I wouldn't be back. That night, in my small kitchen with its linoleum floors and humming refrigerator, I sat alone with a cold mug of tea and a dull ache in my chest. The ache wasn't new. It was old. So old I'd stopped giving it names. But tonight, it had shape. It had weight. I took off the cardigan I always wore when visiting Amber. The nice one, soft blue, no pills. I folded it and placed it back in the closet. I doubted I'd wear it again soon. I don't know when things changed between us. Not exactly. There wasn't one fight or one sharp word. It happened quietly, like frost creeping up a window pane. At first, you don't notice it. Then suddenly, the view is gone. Amber used to call me every day. Then it was every week. Then only when she needed help, a bill paid, a car repaired, a deposit covered. And I gave. Every time. I thought that was what love looked like. But love, real love, doesn't avert its eyes while you're standing in the doorway with a gift in your hand. It doesn't whisper apologies while placing your granddaughter into someone else's arms. I rinsed my cup and left it in the sink. I didn't turn on the television. The silence was louder. There's a drawer in the hallway, second from the top, where I keep my old checkbooks, letters, copies of payments. I opened it for the first time in months, began sifting through what I thought were receipts of love. But what they looked like tonight were records of a slow, painful fading. I didn't cry. I haven't cried in years. Tears are for people who believe they'll be heard. I stood by the window, looking out at the dark yard, the porch light flickering slightly. My hands ached. My back ached. But more than that, something else hurt deeper. The knowing. Not the moment she said, "You can hold the baby tomorrow." Not even when I saw her hand Lily to a stranger. The knowing came after. The quiet realization. I was no longer part of her story. Not really. Maybe not for a long time. But that didn't mean I had to stay in it as the silent background character. I closed the drawer, slowly. There were things I needed to do. Tonight, I'd go to sleep not as a mother waiting to be invited back in, but as a woman remembering who she is. And tomorrow would be mine. I wasn't always this silent version of myself. The woman who waits in the hallway, smiles through dismissals, accepts crumbs as love. Once I knew how to speak up. Once I was Martha Louise Turner, English teacher, widow, and mother who could wrangle a room full of 11th graders into reading Shakespeare out loud without begging. Amber doesn't remember that version of me. Or maybe she's chosen not to. Children don't like seeing their parents as anything other than the roles they need filled. She was my only child, a longed-for, fought-for child. Walter and I tried for years, miscarriage after miscarriage. Every loss wrapped in silence, because back then, you didn't talk about those things. You just tucked the pain away like laundry folded into drawers. When I finally carried Amber to term, I was 39. The doctor called her a miracle, and I believed him. I poured everything into her: time, patience, savings. We bought her the little yellow bike with the pink streamers even when we couldn't afford it. I gave up on travel, hobbies, early retirement. I packed lunches with handwritten notes. I drove her to ballet, then to math tutoring, then later to therapy when she had trouble sleeping. Walter was quieter in his care. He showed up in the ways he knew: fixing her first car, building her bookshelf, staying up late when she was out with friends. He had one rule: don't lie to your mother. And she didn't. Not then. Amber's father died on a rainy Tuesday, heart attack in the grocery store parking lot. He had been buying milk and apples. She was 23, newly married to a man I never liked, and later had to help her leave. I stepped in, of course, paid the legal fees, took unpaid leave from school to help her move. When she told me years later that she and her new husband had been trying for a baby but couldn't conceive, I didn't hesitate. I helped pay for the treatments. All of them. Tens of thousands of dollars over time. I even went to some appointments. I remember holding her hand during one of the injections. She squeezed it too hard, but I didn't flinch. "I couldn't do this without you, Mom," she whispered. "You're the only person I trust." Those words sat in my chest like a medal. I wore them for years. When Lily was born last October, I thought it was the start of something. I imagined visits, holding her in the crook of my arm, rocking chairs, story time, the same lullabies I used to hum to Amber. I thought I'd get to pass something down: love, memory, history. But something shifted before the baby even came. Amber started answering my calls less frequently, said she was tired, stressed, overtouched. I understood. I backed off. I brought groceries and left them at the door. I didn't knock. After Lily arrived, things didn't improve. Amber's husband, Scott, told me it was a chaotic adjustment. He said they were trying gentle parenting and needed quiet space. I wasn't sure what any of that meant for a grandmother, so I asked, "When can I come hold her?" Amber had smiled too wide. "Soon, Mom. It's just, everything's new. We're figuring it out." I waited, sent gifts, offered help. Once I baked Amber's favorite zucchini bread and brought it over. She answered in leggings and a baby sling, looking exhausted. "Oh, I wish you'd texted," she said, shifting the baby. "I did, yesterday." "Oh, right. I must have missed it." She didn't invite me in. I took the bread home and ate 2 slices alone in my kitchen, wondering if I'd said or done something wrong. That's the worst part. Not the distance, but the self-doubt it plants inside you, like rot under wallpaper. I began to notice patterns. Every time I reached out, they were busy. Every time I offered help, they were already covered. And yet, Amber was posting pictures. The baby in someone else's arms, aunties from her book club, chosen family from the birth circle. I didn't even know what a birth circle was. My name never showed up in captions. Still, I kept trying. Because that's what mothers do. Because I remembered all the times she needed me, and I came. Because when you've carried someone in your body and built your life around their happiness, it's not easy to stop. But that day, the day she handed Lily to a stranger, something fractured. Not a loud break, no drama. Just a clean, unmistakable crack that told me, this is as far as you go. That evening, after I sat with the tea and the silence and the drawer full of financial receipts, I realized something. I'd given too much for too long without asking for anything in return. That's not love. That's charity. And charity, over time, becomes expectation. Walter once said, during an argument about Amber's private college tuition, which we could barely afford, "If you keep giving everything away, don't be surprised when they expect nothing less." He wasn't cruel, just honest. More honest than I allowed myself to be. Now, in this house that used to be full of her, drawings on the fridge, sleepovers with her friends, crying fits after breakups, I felt like a ghost in my own memories. But I also felt something else, rising. Not anger, not yet. Just the first stirrings of resolve. Tomorrow wouldn't be about holding the baby. It would be about holding the line. The next morning, I didn't wake up early the way I used to. I let the sun reach higher in the sky before getting out of bed. No reason to rush. I wasn't making soup to bring over or baking bread to freeze for Amber's convenience. I wasn't needed. And for the first time, I wasn't pretending otherwise. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my planner. A cheap, spiral-bound one from the pharmacy. Nothing fancy. But every page told a story. Notes about grocery lists, reminders to pick up prescriptions, birthdays, dentist appointments, and under nearly every week, some mention of Amber. Drop off baby socks. Send check for crib mattress. Follow up pediatrician form. Even text just to say hi. No pressure. I flipped back 6 months. Almost every page carried some version of me inserting myself gently, politely, invisibly into her life. And almost every page also held something I had paid for. I never thought about it that way until now. It wasn't just the big things, the down payment for their house, the IVF treatments. It was the everyday. The little swipes of the card, the transfers, the Amazon packages shipped straight to their door. Diapers. Formula. A white noise machine I didn't understand but bought anyway because she said it would help Lily sleep. She never asked directly. Amber was clever that way. Just a hint, a sigh, a "we're a bit stretched this month," and I filled in the rest. Happily, eagerly. I thought I was helping. But helping turned into funding, and funding turned into silence. When Amber was a teenager, she used to roll her eyes when I said money can't buy love. "That's what people without money say," she would mumble. I think now she understood the other side of that truth, that people with money often pay in hopes of keeping love alive. I took out a pen and started making a new list, not for groceries or bills, but for clarity. I titled the page, "What I Gave." Down payment, $45,000. IVF support, $27,800. Nursery furniture, $3,200. Monthly supplements, estimated 500 Mo x 9 months, $4,500. Postpartum doula, gift certificate, $2,000. Pediatrician bills, when insurance didn't cover first visit. 780. Grocery drop-offs, estimated 1 room 200. Miss. Transfers, utilities, baby apps, clothes. 6,000 total, roughly. Over $90,000. I sat back in the chair and let the numbers settle into me. I'm not a wealthy woman. Walter and I lived modestly. We saved. We were careful. The money came from pensions, some inheritance from my parents, and years of frugality. That money was supposed to carry me through the rest of my life, or at least give me breathing room. But I never resented giving it. Not until the baby. Not until I became the invisible benefactor. Not even allowed to hold the child whose life I helped bring into the world. I didn't need flowers or thanks or a parade. I just wanted presents, a seat at the table, a place in the photo. Instead, I was standing in the doorway while someone else took the baby in their arms. I looked at my planner again. Next Tuesday, a note in Amber's handwriting. Mom, pediatrician at 3 p.m. Can you transfer $100 in case co-pays more? I hadn't seen her in weeks, not really, but the requests still arrived. I picked up my phone and texted back, no. It felt strange to type. Just 2 letters, but they felt solid. Final. I didn't add an explanation. She hadn't offered one when she told me tomorrow or handed Lily to that woman, so I wouldn't either. I stood up and went to the living room. Opened the cabinet where I kept my documents. Property deed, investment records, power of attorney. Pulled them out one by one. Sat down again and began to read. My name was on everything. It should be. I'd worked all my life. I'd built this house with Walter. It was our foundation. But I'd begun to wonder, quietly, if Amber thought of it as hers. The way she once asked, "When you're gone, what happens to the house?" Not with cruelty, just casual curiosity. I laughed it off, said I wasn't going anywhere yet. But it had stayed with me. The phrasing, the assumption. Now I saw it for what it was. A quiet claiming. I closed the folders and placed them in a neat stack. I wasn't ready to make changes, not yet. But I was ready to consider them. That was new. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Amber. Hey, just saw your reply. Everything okay? No follow-up. No, how are you? No, want to come see the baby this weekend? Just to check in on a transaction. I didn't answer. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove out to the cemetery to visit Walter. It was windy, and the grass hadn't been mowed in weeks, but his grave was clean. I brushed away a few leaves and sat down on the bench nearby. They don't need me anymore, Walt, I said quietly. Not for anything but the money, and even that's starting to feel more like expectation than help. The breeze shifted. I closed my eyes. I think it's time, I said. I didn't need to explain. He would have known what I meant. I stayed there for nearly an hour, letting the wind speak for both of us. Then I stood, and I left. Tomorrow, I would begin making real decisions. Not as a mother trying to be loved, but as a woman remembering she still had power. She didn't call the next day. I thought she might, to follow up, to ask why I said no, maybe even to offer a half-hearted apology wrapped in small talk. But nothing came. Just silence. The same kind she's practiced so well these past few years. I tried not to watch the phone. I failed. Around midday, I made soup. Not for her, not for the baby, not for anyone but me. It was something I used to make when Amber was little. Chicken, rice, carrots, the kind that simmered slowly and filled the house with something that felt like home. It tasted like comfort. But even more than that, it tasted like control. There was still a chance this was all temporary, a phase, a miscommunication. Part of me clung to that, the part that had rocked her to sleep night after night, that had sat through her school plays, even when she was just a tree in the background. That part still believed she'd remember who I was, still believed we'd find our way back. But the rest of me, the older part, the worn-out part, had started to understand this wasn't about forgetting. This was about rewriting. Amber didn't want me as I was. Not the mother who worked, who got tired, who sometimes said the wrong thing. She wanted a version of me she could curate, quiet, polished, unopinionated, a helper, a sponsor, a gentle voice on the other end of the line that only spoke when asked. It hit me sometime after the dishes were done and the house went quiet again. I had trained her to expect that. I never said no, never demanded, never asked for reciprocity. I showed up, paid up, shut up. I let her treat my love like a utility. Always on, always available, no bill at the end of the month. There was a time, years ago, when we would talk for hours. She used to call from college and tell me everything. Which professors she liked, what she was reading, who had broken her heart. She cried when her first engagement ended. I drove 6 hours in the rain to pack her things and bring her home. She barely said thank you, but she held my hand the whole ride back. And now I can't even hold my granddaughter. I didn't want to believe she'd changed. It was easier to think I had failed somehow, that if I were more agreeable, more modern, more something, she'd open the door again. But no, this wasn't about who I was. It was about what she wanted me to be. That afternoon, I called her. She didn't answer. I left a message. Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to hear your voice. Hope you're all doing well. No need to call back if you're busy. I just wanted to say I love you. I didn't mean half of it, but the words came out anyway. Muscle memory, maybe. Habit. I hung up and stared at the phone for a while, then turned it off. Let her sit in that silence for once. The next day, she replied, not with a call, a text. Sorry, crazy week. We'll catch up soon. Love you. 3 sentences, 1 exclamation mark. No mention of the baby, no follow-up. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I deleted it. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of saving things that didn't mean anything. That night, I dreamed I was standing outside a glass house. Inside, Amber and Lily and Scott sat at a long table, laughing. There was music, candles. Everyone looked beautiful. I knocked on the door, but no one heard me. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Then I saw it. A sign taped to the glass. Please do not disturb. I woke up with a weight in my chest and the sound of my own breath too loud in the room. The next morning, I opened the folder with my financial records again. I looked at the line that said, Power of Attorney, Amber M. Turner. It had made sense at the time. She was my only child. If anything happened to me, I wanted her to be able to step in, make decisions, access the accounts she'd one day inherit anyway. It was supposed to be practical, but it wasn't practical anymore. It was a leash, a long, polite, invisible leash. I called my lawyer's office. A woman named Camille answered. I remembered her, polite, efficient, no nonsense. I'd like to make some changes, I said, to the power of attorney and the will. Camille didn't ask why. Maybe she didn't need to. Or maybe she knew the sound of a woman who'd reached her limit. Of course, Mrs. Turner. We can schedule you for Thursday. Will that work? Yes, I said. Thursday is perfect. I hung up and stood very still in the middle of my living room. The sun had shifted through the window. Dust motes floated in the air. Everything looked ordinary. But inside me, something had changed shape. I wasn't doing this to punish Amber. This wasn't revenge. This was reckoning. This was the quiet acknowledgement that if someone draws a circle and leaves you out, you're allowed to draw a new one that fits. And I would. The first time I held Amber, I was scared I'd drop her. She was so small, barely 6 pounds, swaddled tightly like a little envelope. Walter had laughed at me, gently, and said, "You'll be fine, Marth. She's yours. She knows your hands." I think about that moment every time I remember what I'm missing with Lily. I remember how that first touch changed everything for me. How real it became. How sacred. Amber didn't want to hold Lily right away. She was exhausted, trembling, unsure. What if I do it wrong? She'd whispered in the hospital room, eyes wild, voice fragile. You won't, I told her. She knows you. You're hers. Funny, isn't it? The way things turn. Last week, she wouldn't even let me in the room. But someone else held Lily. Someone with no stretch marks, no memories, no late-night sacrifices. Just a name and a smile and the ease of not being family. I can't stop thinking about that woman. The yoga friend. The stranger in soft fleece and expensive perfume. I can't even remember her name. Something with a J? Jenna? Jess? I do remember the way Amber handed the baby over like it was nothing. Like she'd done it before. Like I wasn't there. Watching. Sometimes I tell myself maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Lily had already woken up. Maybe Amber just didn't want me to get sick. Flu season, after all. But those are excuses, and I've given enough of those to fill 1,000 cold rooms. No, she didn't want me holding her child. Not then. Maybe not ever. I sat with that thought for a long time yesterday. Sat until it stopped feeling like heartbreak and started feeling like information. There's a difference. Heartbreak pulls you under. Information lifts you up and says, okay, now what? So this morning, I got dressed like I was going somewhere important. Slacks, blouse, coat with the sturdy buttons. I didn't put on makeup. I didn't need armor. I just needed clarity. And I drove. Not to Amber's, not to the cemetery. To a quiet cafe near the university, one I hadn't been to in years. The kind of place with wooden tables and mismatched mugs and a bulletin board covered in flyers for poetry readings and lost cats. I picked a seat near the back, ordered black tea, and waited. He arrived right on time. Not Walter, not Scott, not anyone Amber would expect me to call. It was Nolan, my grandson, Amber's son from her first marriage, the boy who used to draw me pictures of dinosaurs and who once called me from the school nurse's office when he chipped a tooth and didn't want his dad to yell. He's 19 now. Tall, pale, quieter than he used to be. He has a job at a bookstore and takes night classes. I hadn't seen him in 2 years, not since Amber told me he needed space after the divorce. She said he was struggling, acting out, that I should let him find his own way. So I did. But something in me always doubted that version of the story. Nolan was never cruel. He was never cold. He was tender, a little lost, but always mine. I found him through the alumni newsletter of his high school. He'd written a small note about starting community college and working full-time. It listed his workplace. That was enough. When I called, he answered on the second ring. "Grandma?" His voice cracked like it used to when he was 12 and nervous. I hadn't even said my name. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "Do you want to get tea sometime?" He didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I really, really do." And now here he was, sliding into the chair across from me, his eyes still soft, still familiar. "I missed you," he said. I reached across the table, touched his hand. "I missed you too." He looked down. "Mom said, I don't know, that you didn't want to be involved." Of course she did. She told me you were busy, that you didn't want to see me because I reminded you of the past. It landed in my chest like a brick. "That's not true," I said softly. "None of that is true." He nodded. "I figured, but I didn't know how to reach you." We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that heals instead of hurts. "I have a sister now," he said finally. "Her name's Lily." "I know. I haven't met her either." He looked at me, and for a moment I saw a boy again. Confused, aching, left out. "She keeps her world very small," I said. "But that doesn't mean we're not part of it. Even if she pretends we're not?" I smiled, and it felt real. Even then. We talked for an hour about his classes, his dreams, the fact that he writes poetry and hides it in the back of his notebook, the job he hates but sticks with because it keeps his lights on. "I'm sorry I stayed away," he said at the end. "You didn't," I told him. "You were taken away. There's a difference." We walked out together, and before he left, he hugged me. Not a polite hug, a full, leaning in, two-armed hug that made my ribs remember what it was to matter. As I watched him walk away, I realized something. I didn't need to be part of Amber's new circle to have a family. I already had one. I didn't go home right away after seeing Nolan. I drove without thinking, the way you do when your hands know the road better than your heart knows where it wants to be. Somehow, I ended up outside Amber's house. I parked across the street. Didn't get out. Just watched. It was late afternoon, that soft winter light that makes everything look like memory. Her house, with its neatly trimmed hedge and potted plants by the door, looked exactly as it should. Perfect. Still. Unwelcoming. There was a car in the driveway I didn't recognize. Not Scott's. Not Amber's. A moment later, the front door opened. Amber stepped out, the baby in her arms, bundled in soft pink. And then someone else followed. The yoga woman. Jenna, or whatever her name was. A bright coat, a big scarf, the confident steps of someone who belonged. Amber laughed at something she said, shifted the baby in her arms, and then I watched it happen all over again. She handed Lily to the woman. Just like that. Casual. Easy. Like they did it every day. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I didn't even realize how hard I was gripping until the leather creaked. It wasn't just that I wasn't allowed to hold her. It was that someone else was, without hesitation, without limits. Someone who didn't raise Amber. Someone who didn't save for years to pay for her college, or her first wedding, or her second round of fertility treatments. Someone who hadn't lost sleep over her every cough and fever and heartbreak. Someone who hadn't given up her own youth to raise her daughter alone after her husband died in a grocery store parking lot. I watched them talk for a few minutes more, smiling. Jenna took the baby with one arm, scrolling her phone with the other. Amber didn't even flinch. Eventually, the woman handed Lily back. Amber kissed her on the head and disappeared inside. Jenna walked down the porch steps and into her car, pulling away without a glance in my direction. I sat there for a long time. Then I drove to a motel. Not home. I couldn't go home. I needed a place that didn't smell like disappointment. The room was cold. The heater rattled. The blankets were thin. I didn't care. I lay down on top of the bedspread, staring at the ceiling. I kept seeing Amber's hands, the way they moved so confidently, so sure of themselves. She used to hold onto my arm crossing the street, used to cry into my shoulder when her friends turned on her in middle school. I remember the way her fingers trembled when she called to tell me she was pregnant after the 6th IVF cycle finally worked. "We did it, Mom," she'd said, crying so hard I could barely understand her. I did everything I could to make her feel safe, wanted, held. But she didn't want that anymore. At least not from me. At some point, I fell asleep in my clothes. I woke up at 2:17 a.m., heart pounding, mouth dry. I couldn't remember the dream, but I knew it hadn't been good. I turned on the light and sat up. The cheap lamp cast long shadows across the walls. I looked at myself in the mirror above the dresser. Eyes puffy, hair flat, cardigan buttoned wrong. I looked like someone who'd been waiting too long to be invited back in. No more. I stood, buttoned the cardigan correctly, and picked up my purse. Inside was a folder with my financial documents, the same ones I'd been carrying since I left the house yesterday. I pulled them out, laid them on the bed. Then I reached for my phone. Not to call Amber, not to beg or explain. I dialed Camille, the lawyer's assistant. Left a voicemail. "Hi, Camille. This is Martha Turner. I know we have an appointment Thursday, but I'd like to come in sooner, if possible. Tomorrow, if you have an opening. I'm ready to move forward with everything." I ended the call and sat still in the quiet. The silence felt different now. Not lonely, not cold, just mine. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and drove straight to Camille's office. She met me with coffee and the kind of quiet efficiency that I'd always respected. We went over the documents together. Power of attorney, revoked. Beneficiary designations, changed. Will, amended. I left the majority of what I had to Nolan, not because I wanted to punish Amber, but because Nolan had shown up. He'd sat across from me and told the truth. He'd asked nothing of me but time and tea. When we finished, Camille placed the folder in front of me. "All done," she said. I signed. No hesitation. When I walked out of the office, the wind had picked up. I pulled my coat tighter around me and headed for the car. On the way home, I passed Amber's neighborhood again, slowed at the stop sign. I didn't look at the house this time. I didn't need to. There was nothing for me in that doorway anymore. Nothing but drafts and silence. And I was done standing in doorways, waiting to be asked in. The house felt different when I walked in. Not quieter, not colder, just mine. It greeted me the way old homes do. Creaking floorboards, the smell of lemon oil and radiator heat, a stack of mail on the hallway table. I hung up my coat, placed my bag on the kitchen chair, and stood for a moment in the stillness. The light from the window stretched across the linoleum. Same as always. But something in me had changed, and the house knew it. I was no longer someone waiting for a call. I made tea, poured it into my world's best mom mug, the one Amber gave me when she was 12, with a sloppy glitter heart and her name in crooked paint. I used to keep it on display. These days, I keep it in the back of the cupboard. I only bring it out when I need to remember that once she loved me without performance. The phone was still off. I let it stay that way. By the afternoon, I was at the desk in the small front room, going through boxes I hadn't opened in years, receipts, photo albums, Nolan's school drawings, old letters. I found a stack of birthday cards Amber had sent when she was away at college. Each one began with "Dear Mom" and ended with "Love you forever." One of them had a note scribbled on the back. "Thank you for always picking up the phone, even when I was awful. I know I don't say it enough, but I wouldn't survive without you." That card was from the year she dropped out for a semester. She told everyone it was mono, but it wasn't. It was depression. I knew because I slept on her couch for a month until she stopped shaking in the mornings. Now I couldn't even get a returned voicemail. I set the card aside and kept digging. What I was looking for, I wasn't sure. Closure, maybe. Or evidence that I hadn't imagined the love. Proof that what we had once was real. Because if it was real, then this distance, this cruelty, had to be a choice. And that meant I had the right to make choices too. At the bottom of one box, I found a crumpled printout, an old email chain between me and Amber from nearly 8 years ago. She had just moved in with Scott. "Don't worry about us, Mom," she wrote. "We've got it under control. Just be my mom, okay? Not my accountant." Funny, considering how often I ended up playing both. I was putting everything back into order when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a second, my heart fluttered. A reflex? Amber? But no. Through the glass, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in months. Carolyn, my old neighbor, 3 houses down, until she moved into an assisted living place last spring. I opened the door, surprised. "Carolyn?" She smiled, holding a grocery bag. "You're a hard woman to get on the phone, Marth. I figured I'd drop by." I let her in without hesitation. I turned the phone off. Needed the quiet. She didn't ask why. Carolyn's good that way. She stepped into the kitchen like she never left. Set the bag down. "Soup mix," she said, "and the rolls you like." I stood there, unsure what to say. "So?" she asked, settling into a chair. "You gonna tell me what's got your jaw clenched?" And I did. I told her everything. The baby, the door, the woman in the coat, the years of giving and waiting for gratitude that never came. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her hands folded around her cup of tea. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "You know what that is, don't you?" "What?" "A slow betrayal, the kind that pretends it's love." I swallowed. Hard. "It doesn't make you crazy," she added. "It makes you awake." We sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a small card. "You ever think about seeing someone? Not a shrink, a lawyer." "I already have." Her eyebrows lifted. "Well, hell." "I changed the will, revoked the power of attorney, set up a trust for Nolan." "Good." She said it like a benediction. "You're not burning bridges," she said. "You're just refusing to drown." I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. Carolyn stayed for another hour. We talked about soup, about books, about how her knees were getting worse, but she still refused to use a walker. When she left, she hugged me tighter than usual. "You did the right thing," she whispered. After she left, I turned the phone back on. 4 missed calls from Amber. 1 from Scott. A message from a number I didn't recognize. And then, Nolan. "Hey, can I come by this weekend? I have something I want to give you." I replied, "Yes. Anytime. The door's open." I didn't read the other messages. Not yet. That evening, I sat by the window with my tea in the quiet. Outside, the wind picked up, and the trees bent without breaking, just like me. He arrived with a brown paper bag and a nervous smile, like a teenager bringing a peace offering. Nolan stood on my porch for a moment, just breathing in the cold air, before knocking, even though he knew he didn't have to. I'd told him he could walk in any time, but he knocked anyway. Respect, a habit some people still had. When I opened the door, he gave me the kind of hug that doesn't need words. His coat was too thin for the weather, and his shoes were soaked at the toes. "I brought something," he said, holding up the bag. "Not food. I thought about soup, but, well, you're the queen of soup." I smiled and stepped aside. "Come in, sweetheart." He dropped his shoes by the door and followed me into the kitchen. We sat at the table, the bag between us. "I found some old stuff," he said, pulling out notebooks, a folded drawing, a tiny plastic dinosaur missing an arm. "Oh my," I laughed. "You kept the dino." "It lived in my backpack for years. Battle wounds." He laid out the items like they were sacred, and to me, they were. Proof of connection, evidence of roots. "This one," he said, tapping a lined notebook, "is what I wanted to show you." I opened it. Poems, dozens of them, handwritten in a tight, slightly slanted script, some neat, some crossed out, some so raw I had to stop reading after a few lines. "You wrote these?" He shrugged. "Just messing around. They're beautiful." "They're angry," he corrected. I didn't know how angry I was until I started writing. "Anger's not the enemy," I said. "Silence is." He looked at me, eyes wide. "You're not the only one she left out," he said after a moment. I waited. "I haven't seen Lily either, not once." I exhaled slowly. "Why?" "She said it was complicated, that Scott was still adjusting, that she didn't want to confuse things. She told me you didn't want to be involved." He nodded, unsurprised. "She told me you were disappointed in me, that you didn't believe in what I was doing." "I never said that." "I know." We sat for a moment, letting the weight of her words and our truths settle between us. "I tried to reach out a few months ago," he said, "but I only got a one-word reply. Busy." That was it. I nodded. That sounded familiar. "Do you know what hurts the most?" he asked. "It's not being excluded. It's how easy it is for her. Like cutting us out didn't cost her anything." I didn't have an answer to that. Some people could walk away with clean hands because they'd never gotten their fingers dirty in the first place. Not with diapers, not with dishes, not with the daily grit of care. Amber always had a flair for rebranding her choices as boundaries. "I keep wondering," Nolan said, "if I did something, if I missed a moment, said the wrong thing, or didn't show up for something I should have." I reached for his hand. "No, baby. You just grew up. And sometimes that's all it takes for people to redraw the map, one that no longer includes you." He looked at me then, really looked. "You're not mad." "Oh, I'm mad, but not at you." We sat in silence again, not heavy, not uncomfortable, just quiet enough for grief to pass through without getting stuck. "I've been thinking," he said, "about moving out of the city, maybe back here. Community college is cheaper here, and I could transfer later." I tried not to smile too quickly. "You'd be welcome, always." "I wouldn't live with you or anything," he added quickly. "I mean, unless you wanted to," I finished for him. He nodded. "Tell me what you're really thinking," I said. He hesitated. "I guess I'm just tired of being somewhere I'm not seen." That sentence landed in my chest like a dropped stone. We were 2 generations apart, but somehow we'd ended up in the same place, outside the door, looking in. Then come back, I said. Start over. He looked relieved, like I'd opened a gate he didn't know he was allowed to walk through. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, made sandwiches, drank tea, went through the old photo albums. He found a picture of him sitting on my lap, both of us wearing matching sunglasses. You always let me be weird, he said. You were never weird, just interesting. He grinned. Before he left, he turned at the door. You're changing everything, aren't you? The will, the accounts. I nodded. Because she shut you out. No, I said. Because she made it clear I was never in. He nodded. Not surprised, just sad. Thank you, he said. Not for the money, for seeing me. After he left, I stood at the window a long time, watching his shape disappear down the sidewalk. I didn't know what Amber would say when she found out. But for once, I didn't care. Let her feel something. Let her sit in the echo of the choices she made. My life wasn't a waiting room anymore. It was a house with the door wide open, but only for those who knocked. The call came 2 days later. I'd just come in from the garden, my knees sore, dirt under my nails, the good kind of tired, when the phone lit up with her name, Amber. I stared at the screen as it buzzed, watched the letters shake slightly from my own pulse. Then I pressed answer and held the phone to my ear without a word. She didn't say hello. She said, "Did you really do it?" I kept silent. I just got off the phone with the bank, she continued, her voice brittle and fast. They told me you revoked everything, the power of attorney, the beneficiary access, the joint account. Yes, I said calmly. You didn't even tell me. No, I repeated. There was a pause, sharp and full of static. Why? She asked finally, like the victim in a story she'd written herself. Why would you blindside me like this? I took a breath, sat down, let the weight of her question fall between us. You told me I could hold the baby tomorrow, I said softly. And then I watched you hand her to a stranger. That's not, Mom, she's my friend. You're twisting. No, I interrupted. I'm not twisting anything. I'm finally seeing it straight. Silence again. I've given you everything, I said. My time, my money, my energy, and for the past few years, you've given me… What? Politeness when it's convenient? Access when it suits you? You told Nolan I didn't want to see him. You told me he didn't want to see me. You've rewritten the story so many times, I don't think you remember what actually happened. She sighed, sharp and impatient. Why are you dredging up old drama? This isn't about Nolan. This is about the fact that you're punishing me. No, I said again, firmer now. This is about boundaries. Yours, and now mine. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Rapid, tight. She was pacing. She always paced when she didn't get her way. So what? You're just cutting me off? I'm protecting what's left of me. A bitter laugh. So you're giving everything to Nolan now? Is that the plan? You barely know him. I knew him better when he was 5 than I know you now. Oof, I hadn't planned to say it. But once it was out, I didn't take it back. She didn't respond. I didn't want to do this with anger, I continued. And I'm not angry. Not anymore. I'm just done asking for a place in a life that keeps shutting the door. You're my mother, she said, quieter now. You're supposed to… I was your mother when you needed me, when you were broke, heartbroken, scared. I held your hand through it all. I showed up. I never asked for anything. You said you wanted a relationship. I did. But a relationship is mutual. This is performance, and I won't be cast as the extra in your curated life. There was silence for a long time. Then, a whisper. "Do you even want to see Lily?" "I did," I said, desperately. "But now I understand that wanting isn't enough. You're really giving up." "No, I'm letting go." I heard her inhale, shaky. "I didn't mean for it to get like this," she murmured. I was overwhelmed." "I know," I said. "But being overwhelmed doesn't mean you get to erase people." "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. Just think." She was quiet for a long time. "I'll call you later," she said eventually, though we both knew she wouldn't. "All right." The line went dead. I set the phone down gently. Then I stood, walked to the window, and watched the wind move through the trees. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. Just settled. Still. I'd finally said what needed to be said. And whatever came next, silence, apology, anger, was hers to hold, not mine. He came by the next morning with a grocery bag and a grin that reminded me of the boy he used to be. "Thought you might be low on coffee," Nolan said, holding the bag up like a trophy. "And I brought real butter. None of that fake spread." I let him in, took the bag, and smiled. "You'll make a fine house guest one day." He kicked off his shoes without asking, like he'd done it 100 times. It struck me then how ease and kindness sometimes live in the smallest habits. We made breakfast together. Eggs, toast, that coffee. I watched him move around my kitchen, taller than I remembered, more confident than I expected. He belonged here, not like a guest, like a person returning to somewhere they'd been safe once. After the plates were cleared, he sat down at the table and opened his notebook again. "I wrote something last night, after you called." I didn't know what to expect, so I said nothing. He read out loud, quietly. No dramatics. Just the truth, line by line. It was a short poem, maybe a dozen lines. Something about windows and watching, about voices behind glass, about the ache of being unseen. The last line. And still, I waited outside, because I thought love had rules. When he finished, I looked at him for a long time. "You've always been good with silence," I said. He smiled, shy. "I think I inherited that from you." "Maybe, but I've also learned when to break it." He nodded, folding the notebook. "Me too." There was a weight between us. Not heavy, just solid. A kind of recognition that comes when two people stop pretending anything didn't happen. "I'm moving next week," he said suddenly. "Got a little place near the college. It's nothing special, but it's mine." "I'd love to see it." "You will." He hesitated. "Would it be okay if I used your address for a few things? Just while I get settled?" "Of course. Use it for whatever you need." He looked relieved, like asking had taken more courage than he expected. "I never wanted to make you choose between me and Mom," he said quietly. "I didn't," I replied. "She made that choice on her own." He didn't argue. Later that day, I drove him to the hardware store. He wanted shelves, and the car he borrowed couldn't fit them. We spent an hour walking the aisles. It felt like any Saturday afternoon from years ago, back when he needed me to help pick out science fair supplies and glue sticks. When I dropped him off, he leaned over and kissed my cheek. "You don't know how much this means," he said. "I think I do." That night, I opened the letter I hadn't read yet, the one from the unknown number sent days earlier. Inside. "Mrs. Turner, this is Jenna. I was hoping to reach out directly. Amber told me what happened, and I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry for any discomfort I caused. I never meant to come between you and your family. I only ever visited when invited. I hope you're okay." It was kind. Too kind. almost irritatingly kind. I didn't reply. It wasn't about Jenna. It never had been. It was about being replaced so easily, and how everyone else seemed so comfortable with that. I closed the message and deleted it. Then I opened another one, a photo Nolan had sent. His new apartment, one chair, one lamp, a futon, and a coffee mug I recognized from my own cabinet. World's best grandma. He'd taken it. I didn't mind. I smiled. The photo of the mug stayed on my phone screen longer than I meant it to. I kept looking at it, not because of the words printed on the side, not even because Nolan had taken it without asking, but because it was there, in his apartment. His hand in the frame, his feet in socks I'd mended once, that cracked linoleum floor I remembered from my own first place. He had taken something of mine and made it his, and for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a gift finally returned. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, holding the phone, and wondered if Amber had ever felt this. Not nostalgia, but recognition. The quiet, aching joy of seeing someone you raised become someone you respect. I doubted it. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she'd stopped looking for the familiar in me a long time ago. The phone buzzed again, as if the thought had summoned her. Amber. Can we talk? Just that. No emojis, no punctuation. Like she didn't quite know what tone she wanted. I stared at it for a long while before typing back. About what? She didn't respond right away. I made tea, fed the cat, washed the few dishes in the sink that didn't need washing. Finally, about us, about everything. I sat down at the table and breathed in the steam from my cup. Then, not over the phone. A minute passed, then another. Amber. Okay. Tomorrow morning, I'll come by. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want her to come, but because I wasn't sure I wanted her to come, as she always had. Half-guarded, brittle, talking too fast, already building her next defense. Still, I wrote. 10 a.m. And that was that. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because of nerves, not entirely, but because my mind kept playing old scenes. Amber in the high chair, clapping. Amber at graduation, arms flung around friends. Amber calling me after her miscarriage, voice raw. Amber, during the first ultrasound, gripping my hand so tight I thought it would bruise. She'd let me in once, deeply, fully. But that door had closed slowly, like a curtain drawn inch by inch, until the room was dark, and I couldn't remember when I'd last seen her face clearly. I woke before my alarm and dressed without fuss. No perfume, no jewelry, just clean, soft layers and hands that didn't shake. At 10:07, her car pulled up. She didn't get out right away. When she did, I watched from the window as she hesitated on the porch, just one beat too long, like a guest, like someone not sure if they were still welcome. I opened the door before she could knock. Hi, Mom. I stepped aside. Come in. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, not in the skin or the hair, but in the eyes. She looked like someone who'd finally had to sit still in her own consequences. We sat in the living room. She took the edge of the couch, back straight, hands in her lap. I didn't think you'd agree to this, she said. You asked. I answered. Silence. I got your message, she said, about the changes. I nodded. I was surprised. I wasn't. Her mouth tightened. She looked down. I want to say I'm sorry, she said eventually. I know I've hurt you. I know I shut you out. I said nothing. I was scared. After Lily was born, everything felt overwhelming. You always made things look easy, and I felt like I was failing. So I pulled away. I waited. It wasn't about not trusting you. It was about not trusting myself. And I didn't want you to see me like that. Still, I waited. She looked up finally. I don't expect forgiveness right now. I just wanted to say it. I studied her face. Familiar, but distant. Like a song I used to know the lyrics to. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I am changed. She nodded slowly. I don't want money, she added quickly. That's not why I came. I know. I just want to fix it. I don't know how, but I want to. I didn't answer right away. Then, you fix things by showing up. Not just once. Not when it's easy. But again and again. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when you're not the center of the story. She blinked, took it in. I'd like to come back, she said. I'm not keeping the door locked, I replied. But I'm not leaving it wide open either. Not anymore. She nodded again, slower this time. I miss Nolan, she said softly. He misses you too. I was afraid he'd replace me. No one can replace you, Amber. But he did remember me. When you didn't. Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. I respected that. After a long pause, she asked, Can I bring Lily next time? I thought about it. Then I said, If you come to visit me, not just to show her off. A breath. A real one. I understand. When she left, she hugged me, gently, unsure. And for once, I didn't lean in. The next visit didn't happen the following day, or the next. She waited a week. I didn't chase her, didn't follow up. I'd done enough chasing for a lifetime. When Amber finally came again, she brought Lily. No fanfare, no stroller or bag bursting with motherly performance. Just a baby wrapped in a soft blanket, asleep against her shoulder, and a daughter with her hair tied back like she used to when she had exams. She knocked, then opened the door partway and looked in. Still okay? I nodded and stepped aside. She took off her shoes this time, something she hadn't done in years. I noted it the way you note small acts that might mean more than they look. She just fell asleep in the car, Amber whispered. Do you want me to wait? No, I said. Bring her in. She crossed the threshold with hesitation, as if stepping into a different version of our life, one she didn't quite recognize anymore. Or maybe one she finally did. We sat in the living room again, but this time on the same side. The baby lay on Amber's chest, warm and oblivious. She sleeps better in motion, Amber said, like any mother. Soft, a little apologetic. Most babies do. She's a handful and a blessing, sometimes in that order. I smiled, not quite ready to make it easy. Amber looked down. I didn't mean to keep her from you. I really didn't. But you did. I know. We sat with that. Do you want to hold her? She asked it quietly. No ceremony, no cameras, no witnesses. Yes. Amber hesitated just a moment, then lifted Lily into my arms. And for the first time, I felt her weight. Not just the physical, though she was heavier than I expected, solid and sleepy, with that warmth babies carry like a secret. But the emotional weight, too, of time lost, of lines crossed, of names not yet spoken. Her head fit under my chin. Her fingers curled instinctively. I didn't cry. I'd already done my crying. Years of it, in different forms. But something did soften in me. The kind of softness that doesn't make you weak, just honest. She has your eyes, I said. Amber blinked fast. Everyone says they're Scots. No, I said. She has your eyes. From when you were 6 and used to line up your dolls like a courtroom. She laughed. It came out startled, unfamiliar, real. I forgot about that. I didn't. I rocked Lily gently. She stirred once, sighed, and settled. You know, Amber said slowly, when I was pregnant, I thought about how you mothered me. I told myself I wanted to do it differently, that I wanted more balance, more boundaries. That's fair. But I think I confused boundaries with walls. I pushed you out because I thought I had to protect myself from becoming you. I looked down at the baby. And what's wrong with becoming me? Amber looked ashamed. Nothing. That's the thing. I see it now. You were tired and strong and always there. I just never saw the cost. She looked at her daughter in my arms. I see it now. We sat in silence again. Not the stiff kind. The kind you grow into like a well-worn chair. Do you want to be part of her life? Amber asked. I do. Even if it's not always easy? I looked her in the eye. Especially then. She reached over, fingers grazing Lily's blanket. I want to fix things, she said. Not with money, not with gestures, but with time. Can I try? You can try, I said, and I meant it. But trying wasn't a promise. Trying wasn't a reset button. It was a path, narrow, uneven, but there. I handed Lily back. She fussed for a moment, then settled into her mother's arms. I'll come again, Amber said. Next week? I'll be here. She stood, adjusted the blanket. At the door, she paused. I took things for granted. I know. Not anymore. I watched her walk down the steps, baby snug against her chest. This time, she looked back. The next visit didn't come in a week. It came in 3. No warning, no apology. Just a knock at the door on a Tuesday morning while I was peeling apples for pie. I opened it with the towel still in my hands. Amber stood there alone. No Lily, just her. Coat unbuttoned, face pale, eyes heavier than usual. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She walked in like someone who didn't know where to place her hands. Or her sorrow. We sat in the kitchen, the apples still waiting. The smell of cinnamon already filling the air, as if it could soften whatever was about to be said. She's fine, Amber said first, preemptively. Lily, she's fine. I nodded. She looked at her hands for a long moment, then said, Scott moved out. I didn't flinch. She kept going. It's not dramatic, not yelling, not cheating, just cold, like 2 people sharing a room out of habit. I said nothing. I told him I wanted to reconnect with you. He didn't like that. Still, I didn't speak. I think it scared him, the idea of me remembering who I was before we met. She looked up at me. That person liked you, trusted you, needed you. She still does, I said gently. I'm not here to unload, she said quickly. I needed to say it out loud, to someone who remembers the whole story. I reached across the table, touched her wrist. You're allowed to be tired. Her shoulders dropped. Not dramatically, just enough for me to see the girl still curled somewhere inside the woman. I made you feel like a burden, she said, when all you ever did was try. I did more than try, I said. I gave. You took. That's how it went. She nodded. I let Scott shape the rules. I let him decide what love looked like, and I called it boundaries. But really, it was fear. I was afraid of being like you. I raised my eyebrows. Not because you were bad, but because you were constant, and I didn't think I could be that strong. You don't have to be like me, I said. But you do have to be honest. Amber's mouth trembled a little. She blinked fast. I don't know how to fix what I broke, she whispered. Then stop trying to fix it, I said. Just start showing up. She looked at the apples on the counter. You making pie? I nodded. Always do when my hands get restless. She stood up. Can I help? I handed her a knife. No fanfare. We peeled in silence. For 10 minutes, maybe more, side by side. The kind of closeness that doesn't need performance. Then she said, "He asked about the money." I didn't look up. Of course he did. He said I should have fought harder, that it's not normal for a daughter to be excluded from her mother's will. And what did you say? She peeled another strip of skin before answering. I said you didn't exclude me. I excluded myself. That landed hard. She looked at me. He asked if I wanted to contest it, legally. I paused. And? I told him no, that I wouldn't fight for something I forfeited. I met her eyes. You really said that? She nodded. Then, I told him I'd rather rebuild something than inherit it broken. I set down my knife. You may never get back what you lost, I said. But that doesn't mean you can't build something new. I know. We finished the apples. She helped me mix the sugar and cinnamon, lay the crust, fold the edges just the way I'd taught her when she was 9. When the pie was in the oven, she sat down again. You know, when I first told Scott you had changed the will, he called it manipulative. Said you were punishing me. Of course he did. But I didn't believe it. Not really. Deep down, I knew it was the most honest thing you'd done in years. It wasn't about punishment, I said. It was about peace. I see that now. I poured her tea. She didn't ask for sugar. When she left that afternoon, she hugged me again. Not stiff, not performative, just warm. And this time, I hugged her back. She came every Sunday after that. No announcements, no apologies, just presence. Some days she brought Lily, some days not. Sometimes she stayed for 10 minutes, sometimes the whole afternoon. Once she came over just to return a pie dish, but stayed 3 hours folding laundry with me while Lily napped in the crook of my arm. She didn't try to perform, she didn't overcompensate, and I didn't test her. We let the time stitch us back together, not into what we were, but into something quieter, something better, something neither of us knew we could have. She asked once, "Do you still talk to Nolan?" "Yes," I said. "He comes by, calls, reads me his poems." She smiled. "I haven't reached out yet." "He's waiting," I said. "But he won't wait forever." Amber nodded. I don't blame him. It wasn't guilt in her voice. It was something harder to come by. Ownership. She was changing, not all at once, and not for me. She was changing because silence had finally shown her what it costs to keep love on a leash. One Sunday, she arrived with a folder in her hand, sat down without saying anything, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "My legal paperwork, updated, just in case." I opened it. A new will, custody preferences, guardianship notes, my name listed again, not for money, for Lily. "I'm not asking for anything back," she said, "but I want you to know I trust you again. That's all." It was quiet after that. I read the papers, signed where needed. And then she looked at me and said, "You don't have to change yours. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness." I know. But she did buy something even more valuable. She bought time. Real time. With tea and small errands and standing quietly at the sink while I dried dishes. The kind of time that speaks louder than grand gestures ever could. Later that week, I saw Scott at the grocery store. He looked the same. Maybe a little thinner, a little older around the eyes. He saw me in the baking aisle and turned quickly, but I called out, "Scott." He turned, surprised, guarded. I walked toward him. No smile, just calm. "I heard you moved out," I said. He nodded. "Temporary." "Maybe." He shifted his weight. "Amber talk to you?" "She did. She's determined lately." "Good." He looked away for a moment. "She's angry with me." "Probably." Another pause. You really changed your will? I did. To punish her? To protect myself. He met my eyes then, and I saw it. Not remorse, not regret. Just confusion. Like someone watching a machine they thought they understood start making a new sound. Well, he said finally, it's your money. It's my peace, I corrected. You never understood that. And I walked away. No heat, no drama. Just the dignity of someone who no longer needs to explain her choices. That night, Amber called. Not to ask anything, just to talk. She told me Lily had started reaching for her bottle by herself. That she'd laughed so hard at Nolan's poem on his blog, she'd nearly dropped her phone. That she was thinking of going back to work, part-time, for now. You think I'm ready? She asked. You're asking, I said. That's a start. She was quiet for a second. Then, I didn't think you'd forgive me. I'm not sure I have, I said. But I'm here. And sometimes, being there is all forgiveness ever looks like. Lily took her first steps in my living room. Amber was watching, of course, kneeling just behind her, arms out, ready. But it was me she toddled toward. Me she reached for. Tiny fingers outstretched, steps wide and unsure, that wobble only babies have before they fall or fly. I didn't cry, but I felt something shift inside me, a soft, almost imperceptible click, like a door quietly unlocking from the inside. Amber gasped, laughed. Did you see that? She came to you first. I just nodded, my hands steady, my heart finally quiet. We didn't make a fuss. No cameras, no posting. Just the three of us in the fading light. My hands beneath hers, my breath holding the moment in place. Later, after Amber had put her down for a nap, we sat outside with tea. She really loves you, she said. She doesn't know the script yet, I replied. That helps. Amber smiled but didn't argue. I was wrong about so many things, she said. But mostly, I was wrong about what strength looks like. And what does it look like now? She looked at me. Like this. Showing up. Saying I was wrong. We sat in silence again. It felt earned. I talked to Nolan, she added. We met last week, for coffee. I waited. He's doing well. I didn't know that. I didn't ask. But he forgave me anyway. He has a soft heart, I said. He gets that from you, you know. She looked startled. I thought he got it from you. Maybe from both of us. Oh. Maybe softness doesn't have to be inherited, just allowed. Amber looked at me then, really looked. You're the anchor, Mom. You always were. I shook my head. No, honey. I was just the one who didn't leave. We stayed out there until the sun dipped low and the porch lights flickered on. When they left, she hugged me tightly. No nerves, no doubt. And Lily reached for me again, even from her carrier. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the new journal Nolan had given me. On the first page, he'd written, "For everything you remember, and everything you still get to write." I didn't know what I'd fill it with yet, but I knew it would be mine. No more waiting to be chosen. No more shrinking to fit. No more holding space for people who never ask how much it costs to keep the light on. Just this quiet, steady life. Loved by those who stay. And if you've ever felt like the one standing outside a door you once built, I want you to know something. You can walk away. You can change the locks. You can rewrite your name into your own story. And if this story meant something to you, if you saw yourself in these lines, I ask only this. Share it. Leave a comment. Pass it to someone who's still waiting in the cold. Because sometimes the warmest place you'll ever stand is the one you build for yourself.